So getting more into the teaching itself and the classroom experience, um, what would you say? Having taught in different countries, I know that students are different age groups and different countries. It's gonna be a different experience. So, how would you say that? How would you describe Korean students and Korean teachers?
So my teaching experience is different than a lot of the world. So I don't teach in a public school or like in the technical school. I teach in what they call an academy, like after school academy.
Mm-hmm.
So my teaching hours start at around 4:20. The students come in and then they leave at around 9:30. So basically all evening to night classes, late afternoon, evening, night classes. And that's been my schedule at both schools. I've taught at two schools here, and that's what it's been like. So the students I get have already gone through their full school day, then they get a short break, and then they come over to the academy. I would say Korean students are very much overworked, and it's pretty typical to, walk into a 5 o'clock class and just see a class that's absolutely dead, zero energy. Not necessarily their fault. It's just that, they've had no sleep. They get home at, 11 p.m., have to do homework, and then wake up at 7, go back at it, or in school all day. And this isn't like, high school, college, university students. I'm talking about like elementary, like early middle school students. Typically, when I was in elementary school, I'd get home at 2, maybe have an hour or two of homework max, and then play all
Of
day.
course, yeah.
Yeah, do sports. But for them, it's rough. Um, so they are brilliant, especially for their age, considering everything that they know at, let's say, 8 years old, not only in their Korean language but also in a foreign language, everything they can speak and say. It's very impressive, but where they really lack is developing social skills.
Hmm.
Where if you're in school for about 12 hours every day, you don't really have time to go out and play with your friends or learn
Mm-hmm.
other life lessons.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of see it more in the older, like the generations that have gone through this whole academy system. Now they're starting to get into their 20s and 30s. I think it started mostly with the millennials. I'm not 100% sure about that. But yeah, you see a lot of young adults that go out and they have no idea how to talk to people
Hmm.
because they've just been crammed up in their room studying their whole life. So it's much different of an experience than there would be in the USA, I would say for sure.
That's interesting because I would say in like Spain and Colombia too. In Brazil, I taught in a Chinese school, so the students were much more well behaved than in the than in Colombia. And in actually Colombia was a university, so they were fine. But in Spain specifically, was like I'm not someone who enjoys classroom management and telling people to be quiet and all that kind of stuff. I kind of just you know hope hope and expect for it to happen. But yeah, I mean the kids in Spain are super social. They never shut up, so it's interesting that and they have all kinds of breaks and vacations. So it's interesting that how different the experience is, and they're around the same age too, like elementary school, middle school age. So I think it's interesting to just compare, teaching a different place and teaching different, coming from a different culture, uh, how stressed out or how overworked or how polite or how well behaved the students are. I think is something that changes drastically from country to country.
Yeah, more often than not, my challenge as a teacher has been more of getting my students to wake up
Mm-hmm.
and, getting them excited, getting them to have more energy rather
Mm-hmm.
than having to calm them down. And it's gotten to the point now lately where if I have a student that is over enthusiastic and maybe has trouble sitting down but is very energetic, as long as they're speaking English, I'm kind of fine with just letting them go off because maybe they'll wake up the other students.
Right.
So yeah,
No.
it's kind of more trying to find the energy in the classroom is a harder thing out here. But yeah, I mean, there are still, there the misbehaving children that you have to deal with
Of
management
course.
wise. But
Of course. And then what about working with Korean teachers? Have you found the teachers to be very helpful? Do you think, what would you just say? What did you expect going into it? And then what was the result?
I didn't really have any expectations to go with it. I heard of some schools where you teach with a Korean teacher in the room,
Mm-hmm.
kind of there as like
Mm-hmm.
the mediator.
Yeah.
Or I've heard of instances where like the Korean teacher is the real teacher, and then they bring in the foreigner as like an activity manager,
Yeah.
where they just run an activity and then go back to the corner. I've never had any of those experiences. Basically, my first day ever teaching, or just at a school, I was supposed to be training for 2 weeks and then go into teaching, and I had zero experience whatsoever. And basically, there were two foreign teachers at that school. The second one ran off, like he was going away to Sweden for like a quick break and just never came back. And so my my foreign teacher, who is my trainer, was kind of freaking out, and the Korean staff just saw me as another foreigner in the building, and they're like, okay, he's gonna go teach the 4 o'clock class. And I was in that building for less than an hour, and they already threw me in a classroom, and it was like, go, just do
Oh,
the book.
wow.
um yeah, I mean, dealing with staff, it's kind of like they do their, depends. Some staff have no remorse. They kind of just have their way, and they expect like the foreigners to just fall in line, like it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of typical to happen in a
Mm-hmm.
Korean work environment. Some are overly accommodating, like they want to make sure that the foreigners aren't overworked, and then they kind of um, keep a very fragile environment around them.
Mm-hmm.
It's been, ebbs and flows. It just goes around anywhere. So I don't really have any expectations dealing with any staff. I kind of just, take it as it goes. And if I think, a situation isn't going the right way, I speak up about it. If, I don't choose to die on any particular hill, if I just, go with it and just say, okay, today it is what it is, then that's what it is.
Yeah, I think that's just an important skill in life and in teaching in general to be able to just kind of roll with the punches when it comes to, um, oh yeah, you're going to teach these kids today. And that was something that also happened to me teaching overseas where I had taught before, but I didn't really have any kind of, week-long training about this is what we're going to do and this and that. It was kind of just like, all right, you're teaching now, take them away. and
Hmm.
figure out something to do. So there were times where I felt like I was winging it, for sure. But it's I think a job that you really can't learn how to do without doing it first. It's not like you can go to school and learn all about theory, but I think it's, for that reason it's going to be one of those jobs that's never replaced by robots or anything, because you can't really translate that. It's very very much a learned skill, in my opinion, teaching.
Hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, as you said that before you had gone to Korea, you didn't really have any teaching experience. How would you say that you've improved as a teacher over the last 3 years?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've definitely improved a lot. I think mostly in my first year,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of the experience in Korea is kind of just figuring out ways to go in with no lesson plan and just filling out dead time and trying to make it semi-productive. So a challenge I've always had in my lesson plans that have been provided by the school is that, let's say the class is 40 minutes or 50 minutes, and they'll always give me about 20 minutes of material. So when I first came, it was a lot of a challenge where I would have 20 minutes of dead time, and I would just be like, hey kids, let's watch a movie, and we would just watch Harry Potter. And somehow I got away with that for a few months. But now, it's like figuring out a lot of games, figuring out ways to kind of keep them involved. And I've realized definitely a lot of it has to deal with figuring out and developing empathy and trying to deal with a kid that is, crying uncontrollably, how to reel them in. First off, try to prevent them from crying. And yeah, just making sure that everyone is having a positive experience when they leave the room and minimizing traumatic experiences, which I think should be the goal of every teacher.
For sure. Yeah, I think before learning can happen, you have to have some sense of control over the room and be able to read the room as well. Um, I think it's funny you mentioned the showing movies thing because I know I definitely, I mean, I made lesson plans out of it too, but I had watched a show where I was learning a show that I had used to learn Spanish, but they made a version in English that I showed to my students. And then after I showed them, they said, "Oh, can we watch that show again?" And it was just like every single class, all they wanted to do was watch a TV show, and it was like, well, there's no point in me being here if I'm just showing you movies. So, but it was still a good experience.